No, the director is Taylor Hackford, but the writer's Sandy Adobaka. He was in prison.
Yeah.
He was.
I was not.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Hi guys.
Y'all enjoying Dallas?
We wish
Yeah,
we could see more of it.
Really
See the
here.
hotel and the sidewalk.
We're
I've never
here,
been
but
to
we're not
Texas
here.
before, so
Yeah.
Oh, is your first time?
But you already
Yeah.
got Texas pants.
Welcome, welcome.
Oh yeah, no, it's a belt. It's my
noticed-
favorite belt.
yeah.
And I had it with me, and then I got really excited and ran upstairs to put it on. So it doesn't really go with my outfit.
I interviewed. I've interviewed Simon Pegg 3 times here, and I said, "Well, I like Dallas. Been here 3 times." He goes, "I haven't seen anything but the hotel."
It's just a nice hotel.
It's a very nice hotel because that's all you ever see is the hotel.
Eat your guacamole, and I'll eat my guacamole.
All right.
Yeah, we hate to interrupt while you're eating.
No.
No, I shouldn't have even brought. I saw it. It's actually probably the food for you guys that
No, the food's.
You can have it.
we're stealing.
Yeah.
I'm sure
He
you
was
can
so
eat it.
excited.
Alright, cool.
Alright, well, I guess we'll start. When you're ready? Guys
We're ready.
Alright, well, let's do it. Great job on the film. We
We're
really enjoyed it. It's different.
We can't say anything.
Well, we're just stunned.
Okay, I'll start with a question for you. When you meet with a group of journalist writers, people like Alice and I might want to ask you a question about your grandfather. Do you get many questions about your grandfather from people this age, young people? Because she and I would be interested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think fewer people my age know who he is or what his legacy is, but it's one of these things where I think it gives the journalist some immediate thing to write about. So I get asked about it a lot.
From all ages?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things, It's like people always ask John and Val, why did it take you so long to make another movie? So you have that one question you always get.
But you answer ahead of time. You don't even have to
Exactly.
hear it. You know it's there.
Yeah.
People of a certain age, though, will ask you about your grandfather.
Yeah.
Well, what was your inspiration for Ruby Sparks? Writing, because that's your first screenplay, right?
It is.
Yeah.
I have been thinking for a while about sort of relationships and how we define each other in relationship, and how, when you first meet someone, you're always, the first part you encounter is always your sort of idea of the person, because you meet them, let's say you feel drawn to them or attracted to them, and immediately sort of a lifetime of romantic ideals get projected onto that person, and then as you get to know them, you have to reconcile, that idea with who they actually are. So that's just such it's a fascinating process to me. So I've been thinking about that and about the Pygmalion myth, and thinking I might want to write something about that. And then one night I was coming home from work. We used to live by a Macy's. There was an abandoned mannequin in a trash heap, and I thought it was a person. It scared me. And I guess it just sort of sparked something in my mind, because I woke up the next morning with the seeds of this in my head. Yeah.
So wait, kind of like the scene where he starts thinking of Ruby and starts throwing things together and creating it. Was that kind of how you just were sitting at home one day, you just woke up in your bed, started putting things together like a plot? Is that kind of how?
Yeah, I came, I think it was like I had the idea of someone in Calvin's position, a writer looking for inspiration, and, for me, my experience of writing is so often that feeling like I'm being visited, and I think that's how Calvin feels about Ruby, and that's sort of, my first, when I woke up that morning, I had kind of the first 15 pages of this, like, in a chunk in my mind, and had a pretty good idea of where it was going. So I can't explain why, and I don't really know how. It's not like I don't know. It just, sometimes things land on your head.
Did you write it on a computer or a typewriter?
A computer. I'm not such a romantic as Calvin is. I think he's sort of a nostalgist. He's like someone who is trying to hold very tightly to his security blankets, and I think he wrote his first book on that typewriter, and for him it's kind of like, I think a lot of writers employ magical thinking when it comes to their creativity. Like, eating this thing or having this routine or wearing this thing is going to help me access the magic. And I think for Calvin, it's that typewriter. He feels like, and then also a typewriter, of course, is such an isolated object. It's only there for writing, whereas a computer, you know, he could be looking at porn or on Facebook. Yeah, I really wanted him to feel his loneliness, his isolation.
Yes, and when you have writer's block, you really have writer's block with that. You
That's
can't
right, you
distract
can't play
yourself with
solitaire
something.
like
Yeah.
I do.
Now, this is your second time to play a writer in a row. Are you worried about getting typecast?
No pun intended on type.
No. I mean, I was going to do Ruby Sparks when Being Flynn came around, and they feel so different to me, the characters, that I chose not to worry about it. And I think Calvin is defined by being a writer, and I don't think that the Nick Flynn character I played totally knew he was a writer yet. I think that's something that comes later in the film. I think he was defined by his family troubles and being an addict. So I didn't really actually think about writing much during that project, and this was sort of defined by how sacred the writing routine is, and what it's like to not have inspiration, and how paralyzing and terrifying that is, and what people are expecting of you, and all that. So hopefully not.
Was the backstory developed to you? I mean, did you think of it sort of like a Catcher in the Rye? Well, your first book was supposed to be such a phenomenon.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I looked at, there's a couple of modern authors who you could maybe look at who had young success, and just go look at their interviews and sort of how that came out in the media and all that, like a Jonathan Safran Foer.
David Foster Wallace.
Or like a Dave Eggers or something. But most of the people that I looked at were, I think, I read like journals of writers, and Salinger I read about, and like reading John Steinbeck's journals while he wrote, just to get a window into the process.
There was something in that one of those Steinbeck letters, do you remember, where he was like, nothing today? What was that thing?
Yeah, there was a bunch of those.
Yeah, these things are just like, where he sounds like so heartbroken and like frustrated, and he was writing East of Eden at the time, and you just think that is like one of my favorite novels, and you just think, wow, even John Steinbeck,
Yeah.
For me, I feel that the emptiness or the loneliness or kind of the tortured soul of a writer was very captured with you. Was that more of like what you wanted him to be, or is that something that kind of came about as you were becoming Calvin?
Well, hopefully it's both. I mean, I think it's in the words, and I do my best to interpret that. And I think, in the first 10 or 15 pages, you probably get all these really nice building blocks for the character that I then go and try and fill out. So it's not just the success and following it up, but, his father has passed away. Maybe found out his father probably gave him that typewriter, and he wrote his first book on that typewriter. And how has his ex-girlfriend in that relationship, has that impacted his, right, how has that impacted his life and his writing, and the fact that he's so isolated in this house, and is, I think, is hiding and sort of cautious and afraid, and so that puts, I think, even more pressure on his ability to work, since he doesn't have many other outlets, right? His brother's his only friend, and his dog isn't helping him meet chicks, so, somebody has asked me before, is it hard to, writing is a hard thing to dramatize because it's internal, but, a scene sitting at the typewriter with writer's block felt dramatic to me just because of what's come right before it. So when you sit down there as Calvin, right, what am I going to do with my next 4 hours if I can't write? And he's not in the best point of his life, so he needs to be able to do something. Thank you.
Were there things, since you were involved with the script and then with the filming, once you got on set, were there things in the script that the directors wanted to change that you just did not want to give up?
Well, we sent the script to Jonathan and Valerie in like the summer of 2010, and they came back to us with their interest in October of that year, and with a sort of their first set of notes right at the end of October, and I could tell just from that first set of notes that we were on the same page, that we talked on the phone then too, and just really basic things like how they wanted to treat the fantasy elements of the movie as completely real, like completely aligned with how I saw the movie. And not everybody, we had talked to some other producers, for instance, before we settled on Ron and Albert, and I felt like there were people who saw the movie very differently. So I felt really comfortable with them right away, and then I felt like their notes were helping me make a better version of what I wanted to write. So it was really easy for me to collaborate with them to take their notes and take a chance, write a scene that I wasn't sure we needed, and then allow them to make the decision that we did or didn't need that scene. I think my grammar just got lost there in a serious way, but I think there were times when they asked me to change things, like they would ask for a rewrite on a scene, and I would feel like I didn't want to do what they were asking me to do, and I would say that to them. And most of the time, though, their instinct to change something was sort of diagnostic, if that makes any sense. Like, there was something that needed to be changed, or there was a need for greater catharsis or more emotional depth somewhere, and they didn't always have the solution, but them sort of putting a finger on it helped me see the problem. And so that was the most tension, or not tension, that's the most difference that we ever had of opinion. By the time we got on set, we definitely were envisioning the same movie, and it was, really an easy, fun collaboration.
I think the movie was interesting because, honestly, I kind of expected when you saw, Ruby, and I figured, oh, he's going to go crazy, then he's going to have to go talk to his psychiatrist, and then it turns out that everyone else was seeing Ruby too, and then I started to think, wait, I think I'm going crazy. Are they really? Think, oh gosh, that was a really good, step for the audience. We didn't expect that to happen, so congratulations on that. I do have to ask something, it's a little more personal. How did you guys meet? I want to hear this. The relationship movie. This is kind of cute.
We met doing an off-Broadway play almost 5 years ago. So we met day one of rehearsal. Had not met before.
I prefer,
And here we are.
Yeah, that was almost 5 years ago. That was fall of 2007.
Did
So
you?
it was before mix cut off then? That was you
Yeah.
all of us in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
We
Ride? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, we did that. I sort of stepped in at the last minute on Meek's cutoff. But,
There was an actor who didn't work out, and Paul came in and sort of.
But that almost didn't feel like that is so different, the experience from this. Some people have asked, right, because we worked together in a film before, but I don't know, it feels like, it doesn't even feel like that.
No.
I had no, that
We
did
were
not
like walking,
inform
we were
this
like walking
experience
across
at
the
all.
desert trying like to like remember how to drive those oxen and trying not to like die of heat stroke. Like it definitely was surviving together, not working together.
Yeah, very romantic.
If Bored to Death hadn't been canceled, were you going to be in the next season?
I wasn't in the next season. There was a third season that I was not in. No, I think that was just one of these things where Jonathan's our neighbor, and had worked with Paul and Extra Man. We had met a bunch of times, and he just asked me if I'd be interested in doing something. And to be totally frank, I was about to do a play off Broadway, and I needed the money. And I liked that show, so it seemed, and I love Jason's work, so it seemed like just a really kismet thing to have happen.
This is kind of a two-part question. What was your mindset in that kind of pinnacle scene where Ruby finds out she's sort of fake? I don't know how you would. What would you describe that as? Like,
Well, I don't want to give away too much for your reader.
we're not going to. This is for me, more or less.
What was my mindset?
Yeah, what was your mindset going into that scene? And like, were those moves rehearsed? Were they improv?
They were not improvised. that was a scene where Jonathan and Valerie and I knew what the scene was, but we had a block against it. We couldn't sit down and figure out what those actions were going to be. Every time we did, we would talk about something else, or it was like we couldn't face it. And part of it was that we hadn't shot the movie yet, so we didn't know sort of what the emotional timbre had to be. And so by the time we shot it in like our last week, I think, or second to last week, and we had gone very far down the rabbit hole at that point, so I think we were ready to face it. And the day before we shot it, we sat down and we made up a list of those actions. I asked that I not make them up by myself because I wanted to feel controlled. So they came up with a list of actions. I came up with actions. Paul did. We edited those down and picked, I think, 5 or 6. And then we sort of rehearsed the staging of it. And so I had the order memorized. And then when we edited those down and picked, I think, 5 or 6. And then we sort of rehearsed the staging of it. And so I had the order memorized. And then when we actually shot it, they had these like metal pipes that they would hit together to cue me to go into the next action. And I couldn't go on to the next one until they hit those pipes, and they manipulated me. They some of those takes were 10, 14, 16 minutes long, and they would just let me go until I was way beyond the point of exhaustion. So it was rough. Yeah, it was much more physically draining than, I don't even mean like in an airy-fairy emotional way. It was just physically really hard to exert that much energy, especially at like 4 in the morning when we shot that. Yeah.
That's awesome. When you were writing the script, did you have the roles already cast in your head? Like, was it always for Paul or Calvin's parents and his brother?
Paul and I were the only pieces of casting that we conceived of early, and I had already started writing, sort of that first burst of inspiration, and then Paul read those pages and asked if I was writing it for us, and it hadn't occurred to me, but as soon as he said it, it seemed like, oh yeah, of course that's what I'm doing. And then, the rest of the casting was up to Jonathan and Valerie, and they, I think, more than surprised us and excited us with their choices. Someone like Antonio was definitely not who I had in mind writing that part, and it was just so perfect to have this sort of uber masculine foil for Calvin.
Did being together, off screen and on screen, 12, 13-hour shoots a day, was that fun spending 24/7 together working in on screen?
Well, that's a good question.
It was not without its challenges.
Actually,
Safe
the
answer.
working.
No, working together was great. But I think for the most part during the day we were there for Calvin and Ruby, and sort of,
we were working too hard to really concentrate on our relationship while we were at work, and we worked together well. But driving home, LA traffic after like a 14-hour day, and we're hungry and we're tired.
Cranky.
We can get really cranky. We have to bicker. It's like one of these. We never fight, but we bicker.
It's little stuff. Well, no, I'm not even into it.
Since you guys basically cast the characters for yourself, is it pretty much a little bit of what happens every day with you guys in the movie? Obviously, you have great chemistry, obviously. So would you say you took a little bit of your situation, you guys, interacting with each other into
Paul would have agreed to act in this if I put anything resembling him on screen. He's a very private person. I'm much more open, but he's super private.
Well, Zoe is a really good writer, and she doesn't need to take an exact scene from our life and write it down, but she will take emotions and experiences that we've shared or that she shared with other people, and I'm sure there's parts of me in there, and parts of her in there, and parts of ex-lovers in there, and all that stuff. But yeah, luckily it's not, replicas of us or of our lives. And I mean, I think once people see that, they'll understand that even more, just because, well, things can't happen in life that happen in the film.
So
Do you guys have a dog?
No, we wish.
We wanted to take Oscar home with us. That was the dog that played Scotty.
How do you cast a dog? I mean, that's a silly question, I know, but
It's a good question. I actually wrote this with a big dog in mind, and then please don't interrupt me on this again. And then the big dogs that they liked were really slobbery dogs, and they were worried about our wardrobe. So they found this border terrier that they loved, and they went with Oscar. But Oscar is also like
It's great.
a real sweetie.
Yeah.
This is his big break. It's his first movie.
With that, Calvin's parents' house was like amazing house. Was that like a set or is that like an actual?
No, that's a real house.
Sid Croft, who created HR Puff and Stuff's house.
Okay. It was amazing. I was like, I want that
And
house.
we
It
did
was great.
almost didn't touch a thing.
We just
Okay.
took out the HR Puff and Stuff figurines, and that's the only thing the production designers
Yeah,
had to do
and
that
that was
house,
right
and
in
vacuum the cat
LA.
hair.
I was in the Hollywood Hills, just like
Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes from Calvin's house, which are so different. Wild.
can you guys tell us about your upcoming projects? I know you have some pretty amazing stuff, the
Mhm.
both of you.
Looper Night Moves.
Yeah, I have a small film coming out in September called For Ellen by a woman named So Young Kim, who did a film called Treeless Mountain. That's sort of an art house film. I have a small part in a film called Looper that's coming out in later September, which is this director Ryan Johnson I really wanted to work with, and I think he's the real deal. And then I'm about to go do a part in a film called 12 Years a Slave that Steve McQueen is directing, who did Hunger and Shame. He's got a great cast, and it should be an interesting film. So I'm looking forward to going to do that.
Is Michael Fassbender in it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah, Brad Pitt, and I mean you
Tell Edge and
Yeah.
Floor.
like a crazy, really good actors in it. I don't even remember all of them, but
Yeah.
it's
Any-
online.
Any screenplays you're working on?
This year has been unusual for me. I haven't gotten that much time to write, so I'm really looking forward to. I'm always working on something. I have like 4 things I'm in the middle of, but I need to get back in front of my computer. Yeah.
Who's more intimidating to work with in front of the camera, Robert De Niro or Zoe?
I hope De Niro. I mean, goddamn. She's still thinking.
I don't know. Bob gives a really nice hug.
It's so
It's a really
funny.
warm, full, bear-like hug. You give nice hugs too.
It's apples and oranges, I guess.
Yeah.
Me and taxi driver.
We're gonna switch out the.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice talking
Thank
with
you.
you.